Hello, everybody. It's Nick Pendergast here from Clarity Kent. I'm a counsellor, therapist, menopause therapist, and coach too. So I wanted to welcome you to today's session, and I'll begin to share my slides shortly. But it's all about imposter syndrome and how we go about taming the chimp on our shoulder. So bear with me while I just share my screen with you, and then I should appear in the corner of the screen now. So let me just go to slideshows. So yes, here we are talking about imposter syndrome on this very rainy bank holiday Monday, and I'll come on to an acronym shortly called RAIN that can help us when we're taming that chimp on our shoulder, or my inner Captain Caveman that I like to refer to my imposter as. If those of you from the 80s, maybe even the 70s, remember Captain Caveman, or Cavey Wavy, as he was fondly called. So this is really talking about how we can feel, a bit like a phony showing up in our business. And that's your imposter, when our imposter really comes in. So we're going to be looking at how our imposter shows up, and giving some thought to what it hopes to achieve, and what we can do as solo entrepreneurs in our business to tame that critical voice. And that's about how we can reframe our language, our words, our stories, our narrative, frankly, how we actually talk to ourselves, and how we can keep our imposter in check. And how we can turn to our inner coach. I like to talk about this inner coach for support and reason, which is really talking to ourselves kindly, with self-kindness and compassion. And that's all in the language too. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So I said a little bit about me up front. I'm Nick Pendergast, obviously an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur myself, working in private practice. And I also work for a great organisation in London called Self-Space, which provide therapy in the London area and virtually as well. So a lot of my work of late has been supporting women in midlife in the sort of menopause therapy, menopause therapeutic coaching space. A little bit more on that later. But I think being entrepreneurs who are introverted, and I would consider myself one of those. It was many years ago when you may have come across it before. I did something called the Myers-Briggs personality profile, and I trained in it as well. And with that profile, introverts are actually described as not necessarily the quiet, shy, retiring types, although we are, but quite often it's how we like to recharge our batteries. And that quite often is spending time on our own with a small group of people, maybe reading a book, having a bath. It isn't about topping up our energy by being around lots of people. So whilst I spent many a year working in HR and training and development and team facilitation, I always needed my downtime afterwards to really top up, the battery again. But you know what? Being in business, running our own business, it does require, doesn't it, a lot of energy. It can feel very tiring, very draining at times. So a nod to self-care. We do need to look after ourselves, both at work and at home. So boundaries in that sense are really important. So saying no is okay too. But I'm going to share throughout this session just some tips on how we can show ourselves kindness, compassion, and look after that imposter and keep it in check. Now, we might call our imposter the critical voice, the chimp on our shoulder, I refer to him actually as my inner caveman, or wavy wavy, as I described earlier. But this is all about being kind, and actually it might sound a bit ironic, but befriending our critical voice. And that's what keeps us safe. That's how we show ourselves compassion. But there'll be a little bit more on that later. But you may feel like you're feeling a bit of a fraud. This could be in midlife too, in our 40s and our 50s. And I think being self-employed can really bring up a shift for us in our identity. Actually, one might say, different identities, how we are at home, how we are at work with friends and family. Kind of the feelings of loss of how we once were, the uncertainty with running our own business, and understandably, I want to use the word vulnerability about who we are, who we're becoming, how it feels, how daunting, overwhelming it can feel running our own business. But actually, it brings excitement and opportunities, doesn't it? Right? Because we can be our own boss and we can decide what we want to do, and we can really build on and work with our own purpose too. So, imposter syndrome, you might have heard it called phonyism, is pretty common and actually affects about 70% at some point in our lives. And yes, it can certainly surface, can't it, as solo entrepreneurs. And I think from my own experience in midlife too, with some acceleration, which can lead to feelings of feeling quite isolated, quite lonely, self-doubt creeping in, confidence, self-esteem. And I think we can at times begin to struggle with ourselves and our identity, both at work and home. And I wonder if that sounds familiar to you. So, and we can have those feelings like, I feel a bit of a fraud. I just kind of don't fit in here anymore. And I think when we're running our own business, maybe in contrast to when we were employed, we were kind of taken along with the crest of the wave of kind of being on autopilot, certain routines, things we had to do. But now I think we can experience more stress, more anxiety, a huge crisis of confidence, because it's ultimately down to us in terms of managing and running our own business. So I think we do at times can have that sinking feeling. I've certainly experienced it, of saying, am I good enough? Am I kind of, am I cut out, for this? And we can feel that everything from, day to day running our business to, I know you've been there probably, and I've done it too, is that anxiety, that apprehension of going to networking events, having to do a 60-second pitch, or leading a meeting, running a networking meeting, whatever that might be. But then the catastrophizing voice, the critical voice, the chimp on our shoulder, as I like to call him, that begins to shout at us loudly, and is very tiring and exhausts us. So some of us, or some people, refer to their inner caveman, or as their negative voice, their inner critic. But it is, just to normalize this, it's quite normal to have a negative voice, that sort of negative chit chat in our minds. And it's actually our survival brain, its way of keeping us safe. And actually, whilst it keeps us safe in actually a non-threatening life situations, there is a cost to our inner caveman, our inner critic, our imposter, running wild, in that we overthink, creates overwhelm, anxiety, and self-doubt. But I think there's something that's really key, and I'll recommend a book later where this comes from, is don't buy into the myth that your imposter, your critical voice, keeps you motivated and being a high achiever, because you can't beat yourself up for something without beating yourself up in the process. So it's important that you can spot your imposter, your inner caveman, your inner critic. And a book that I'll recommend later talks about giving him, her, it, a name, an identity, so we can befriend it. So when it comes up, we know how to approach it, how to befriend it, and different tactics we can use and tips to keep that imposter in bay. So how does your imposter pipe up? Can you spot it? And it reminded me a couple of days ago where I remember seeing this poster, a day in the life as an entrepreneur, how we kind of oscillate from maybe being excited one minute to, oh, I've messed up the next, or, oh my gosh, this is wrong, completely sucks, I'm going to go bankrupt. Oh, and hang on a minute, oh, actually life doesn't feel so bad. So this is often an imposter talking here about how we talk to ourselves, how we speak to ourselves. So the first one is labeling, so that kind of name calling. Oh, I'm just a complete idiot. I'm never going to get terms with this business malarkey. Then there's the mind reading, and what we kind of worry about what other people are going to be thinking. How can we possibly know what other people are thinking? And actually, they're probably not thinking anything at all. So maybe thinking, oh, I think I'm stupid. I'm not cut out for this. Catastrophizing. We kind of all do it, that kind of doom and gloom, this self-employed lark is never going to work. But for me, do I give up on it? And I'll talk a little bit. I've got a great little poster on a slide that follows about the shoulds, which talks about how often do we should all over ourselves, metaphorically speaking. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Well, so-and-so over there is doing that, so maybe I should do that. But actually, what do you want to do? The overgeneralizing as well. I do this too. Oh, they're so much better than me. Look at him, her over there. They seem to be doing so much better. And my twist on comparison, or comparisonitis, as I like to call it, a bit of a mouthful, is that, that sense of, oh, they're so much better than me. And I'll come on to that shortly. And finally, the what ifs. What if I can't make a successful of this? What if I don't make any money out of this? What if people don't like my offering? Thing that's gone through my mind quite often. Oh, the local market is quite saturated for counsellors. How do I differentiate myself? I get tongue-tied at a networking meeting, and I'll make a fool of myself. I've been there too. And if only I could go under the radar, keep the business going so I don't have to do this social media malarkey. It makes me chuckle just as I say these comments, and I hope they resonate with what comes up for your imposter too. But how we speak to ourselves, it does really take a toll on our beliefs around our confidence, our self-esteem. We may feel quite rejected or abandoned in our businesses, not feeling good enough. It's that kind of whole big brother thing. Who do you think you are? Are you cut out for this? As I said before, 70% is this kind of normal, it's just kind of normal self-doubt. It feels uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to stop us in our tracks. So, but recognizing it can run the risk of massively denting our confidence. So let's come on to the meat of all of this. And as I like to call it, how to tame your imposter, your inner critic, or my heavy wavy. So there's some different things that we can look at here. And go with me here. I do like my cartoon characters, and would throw back to the 70s and the 80s. So how do we tame our imposter so that it doesn't have a field day? What can we do so we can rein on our inner critics parade, so to speak. I think we have to be aware of why our imposter shows up, because ultimately it's like anxiety, it's like fear, imposter. It thinks it's doing good, it thinks it's rocking up to keep us safe. And the key often is safe from what? In reality, what is the fear? What is the thing that we're most concerned about? So I talk a lot, whether it's about imposter, anxiety, fear, it's about befriending our wavy wavy. So because with our imposter, as soon as I like to call it, it sees a chink in our armor, in our armory, it's going to get in there and it's going to, as I like to call it, start poking the bear, it starts to have a field day and start kind of ramping up its voice. So the first thing is to notice the negative chit chat in our head and befriend it and be able to shift your language and your tone of voice that you're using with yourself. So I talk about we turn our can'ts into cans, and then we bring on those good old affirmations. I can do this. I am good enough. I do belong here in this networking community. I am worthy. I am creative. I think it's also important that we think about our mindset. So is it one of what we call a growth mindset? So we're thinking quite upbeat, quite positive, or is it quite a fixed mindset? It's quite stale, it's quite stuck in terms of, I can't do this, I'm not going to be successful. And do we come from a place with our business of abundance, which is, this is very opportunistic, I'm really passionate about this, I've got a lot of purpose, or do you come from a place of scarcity? And that scarcity place is that we're not going to get off past first post, not even past the baton to somebody else. It's like a game of rounders because we're kind of stuck in that scarcity mindset. And how do you talk to yourself? I'll give you some examples here because I bet you bottom dollar, and I do this myself, you wouldn't talk to a friend like this. So how often do you should all over yourself? And there's a great little slide here of some examples. Our language, our words, our stories, our narratives gives us clue as to what's going on with our imposter. That's the detective piece. So how often do you hear yourself saying, oh, actually come from that, notice anybody else saying that are close to you, I have to, I must, I should, I could, I'll try. Now, if we say I'll try, we bet your bottom dollar it will never happen. It's not a work in progress. It's never going to happen. So this is about reframing your language and your thoughts. They very much go hand in hand. So here are some helpful ways to tame that self-doubt, aka Captain Caveman, and be that glow-getter. And really using the power of certain words to ourselves to be kind, positive affirmations, and to be your own coach and cheerleader. And then you'll fulfill the glow inside and out. And I'm sure there'll be ways of me popping these into the portal for you. So from yes, but to yes, and. From I can't to I can. From I try, I will. And also the word because, really powerful. Because I'm choosing my self-talk carefully, my confidence will grow. Imagine me making the career shift that I've always dreamed of. In a moment, you're going to work out your next step. Now, I'm relaxing now. In contrast, try implies it will be hard and nigh on impossible to do. And I realize that I'm totally capable of delivering this project. So also think about, we look around at our solo entrepreneur community at networking meetings, and the comparison kicks in. Oh, Nick seems like she's got it together. Well, she seems to be doing a similar thing to me, and she's posting up on social media. Yet, why am I feeling like a fraud? So a key point here is stop fighting your feelings. Don't allow them to bully you. You know, you're not in a wrestling match with them. So focus on your breathing. and you allow yourself to experience them, to listen to them. Now, emotions are like messengers. So lean into them, befriend them, have a conversation with them in your head. What are they telling you? Play detective, because they are clues to what's going on for you and why your imposter is piping up. And stop the comparisonitis. There's a quote, I think, from Teddy Roosevelt that says, comparison is the thief of joy. It's far healthier and kinder to yourself to compare yourself to what you've achieved, say, in the last 3 months, 6 months ago, a year ago. Kind of get my gist. So if you're not feeling good about yourself, journal your strengths, reflect in what you've achieved in your business, personal life, family, career successes, and compare that, not to what anyone else is doing, but how you were 3 months, 6 months ago. You may not be a fan of journaling, you may not, but just kind of bulleting some ideas will be great. And also gratitude is really key, whether you do that first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Be present in terms of what are you really grateful for in your business. It's your choice, on how you choose to do that. Power poses. Now, you may feel that I'm losing the plot here, but it's really helped me in my career and in my business. There's a great talk here, a link to a TED talk by Amy Cuddy about power poses. So think your Beyonce's, think your Wonder Woman, why my picture up is there, it's all about shifting your body language. How often do we find ourselves at our desk just slumped, kind of shoulders back, kind of slumped, even now? Just thinking about your pose can help build confidence, keep your doubting Thomases at bay. And this all plays into the power of visualization of yourself, how you see yourself in your business, so you can show up confident and without self-doubt. I will put this in Jane's portal. There's a great, what I call, failure exercise. Write down one thing that you've done imperfectly perfect today. Look at it in a way that failure is a good thing, because it means you learn from it, you grow. We spend a lot of our life putting things off because we feel we need to get it right in our business, whatever that is. And it needs to be perfect from our own perspective. Again, what is perfect? Against our key drivers and beliefs. And it can often be coming from other people's expectations. And at the end of every day, find yourself an accountability buddy. It could be one of your children. It could be a friend who's also self-employed in business, an accountability buddy, and get them to ask you what you failed at today. And write down and reflect what you've learned, what you could have done differently. How do you see it now if you were going back to do it again? And if there are any changes that you have made. And again, what growth is going on for you. And a final one to share is an acronym called RAIN. Highly topical today, because it still seems to be chucking it down in Hildeborough. And RAIN represents recognize, acknowledge, investigate, and nurture. So the R for recognize is head off the shame of your imposter. Face the hard feelings. What are they? And say, hello, my old friend. Mr. and Mrs. Imposter character, why are you coming knocking on my door? Befriending? Treat your inner critic, your imposter, with compassion, because it wants to help you, even though it feels incredibly uncomfortable. Acknowledge. Rather than see our imposter as the enemy, again, it's there for a reason. Welcome it in, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee with it, and really get to understand what it thinks it's protecting you from. Maybe kind of getting things wrong, and really kind of journal on that. Investigate. So where's this imposter voice coming from? What does it want to protect me from? What are the difficult emotions it's trying to keep at bay? And nurture. What do you need in the moment? Is it reassurance? And this is when sometimes we have to take that momentary pause. We may catch up with somebody in our network. We may get out in nature. We might journal, because there is this piece about it will pass. We can pause, we can breathe, we can be mindful. We can take our minds off things and come back to it later. So that's really where a good support network comes in. The very community we're in for this week's long worth of talks in Jane's community, our local networking communities, because it's really important to have that feeling of belonging. There's other people like us out there, helps promote our confidence, our self-esteem. Surround yourself with healthy supporters. Not the toxic types that make you feel to be 10 times worse. You're not alone in feeling this way. And of course, just kind of before I finish, there's always therapy, there's always therapeutic coaching. And in the work that I do, we can look at your self-limiting beliefs, that you leave you feeling like that imposter, and investigate and look at any underlying stress, anxiety, and overwhelm that comes along with holding on to those self-limiting beliefs. And we can look at tools and techniques together to manage our behavioural responses, your feelings, and your emotions. And of course, with my menopause therapy work, we can do that with a midlife lens too, which kind of looks at the shift in our identity, our passion, our purpose. Because, we want to ultimately thrive in what we do. We don't want to just survive. We really want to draw on our passions and our strengths. But it's very much about noticing that internal chatter that you're having with yourself. So really just finally, it's thinking about getting your inner coach on board. Self-kindness and compassion all the way. Remembering you are good enough, you are unique, you are perfectly imperfect, and you are being human. And I don't think you can see this, but I'm actually sporting a being human sweatshirt today, and be part of that community, that network of local entrepreneurs. I wanted just to leave you as well with some really good texts that you might want to read or listen to on Audible, which is Dr. Stephen Peters, called The Chimp Paradox, and also a great book, which I've got here, which is actually written by a counsellor herself. It's a really good go-to, which I took a lot of information from this session, which is But I Should Be Fine by Zoe Clements. As I said, I will look to see if I can get the RAIN technique, the failure exercise, and a few other bits and pieces into Jane's portal. But thank you so much for tuning in, or maybe even listening to this session in a week or so's time, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye for now.